Hello and welcome to today's Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, if you take a moment, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, and make sure to hit the notification button so that you will get the alerts as soon as we go live. I know you think that simply following the channel would be enough, or simply liking it would be enough, but unfortunately, you know how these guys are. They're trying to suppress our voice. They're trying to suppress your voice. So help us out, or help us help you be able to view the program live. Make sure you hit those notification buttons. Also, go to fbcgear.com, fbcgear.com. It is the place to go to find all sorts of good, very cool Pro 2A swag. And know that every dollar that you spend will go right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fbcgear.com. All right, let's get into today's subject. There was an article that I read recently in PBS, and it was talking about how the good guy with a gun, though they refer to it as a myth, but we all know that, that there are real instances out there where individuals utilize a firearm in order to protect themselves, protect their loved ones, and to protect their property. But according to PBS, according to an article recently on their website, for them, it is nothing more than an archetype. It's a myth. It's a fantasy. It's a pro-gun fantasy that is cooked up, and it's one that they believe happens to be very dangerous. Right? In the piece, let me just kind of show you kind of what they wrote here in the piece. So, in the piece, they said gun enthusiasts have embraced the idea of the good guy as a model to emulate, a character role that just needed real people to step in and play it. In fact, the NRA store even has sells t-shirts with LaPierre's slogan and encourages buyers to show everyone that you're a good guy with the gun by buying a t-shirt. Right? They even go on to say that the problem with this archetype is that it's just that, an archetype, a fictional fantasy. In Pulp Fiction, the detectives never miss. Their timing is precise, and their motives are irreproachable. They never accidentally shoot themselves or an innocent bystander. Rarely are they mentally unstable or blinded by rage, and when they clash with the police, it's often because they're doing the police's job better than they can. Okay, so what I'll give them on that is their breakdown of the archetype, or at least the Pulp Fiction versions of some characters, is accurate. But here's the problem with it, is that I don't think anybody who believes that the good guy with the gun narrative includes any of that, right? Like, we don't necessarily believe that you're never going to miss. But, and by the way, the reason why we believe you're never going to miss is because what do? We promote training. Training. How to safely possess your firearm. How to safely, in the event that you do have to draw your firearm, how to be effective and efficient with the firearms that you have. Now, the interesting thing about it is, in particular, when you start talking about concealed carry, there are very, very few instances, very rare instances out there where individuals who are concealed carrying actually wind up shooting the wrong person, or actually wind up, as they say here, committing crimes because they're enraged or because they're mentally unstable. Very, very few incidences when you consider how many people out there carry firearms. And you see almost no clashes with the police. So right away you can see that their archetype just falls flat on, or their example that they give falls flat on its face. Now, but they, like I said, they also believe that this is a myth, that it actually doesn't happen. So I found an article on Heritage. This was actually just this month, just this month in June. And they actually broke down all of the instances nationwide that they could find of a good guy with the gun stories that took place. This myth, this dangerous fantasy that doesn't exist, this archetype that doesn't exist, that PBS doesn't believe exists. So let's take a look here. So May 1st in Detroit, A 95-year-old woman defended herself and her home against three men who broke the security bars on her windows. The woman called the police. Then, fearing for her life in the interim, she fired at the intruders, and one shooter was wounded. All three fled. On May 5th, in Memphis, a woman called the police twice after spotting a man on her home security cameras who was walking suspiciously along the side of her house. Before officers could arrive, the man kicked down the woman's door. He was met by a hail of gunfire from the woman and fled the scene wounded, eventually admitting herself to the hospital he fled wounded, eventually submitting himself to the hospital where he was arrested. May 7th, Lumberton, North Carolina. Two would-be armed robbers confront a 39-year-old man in an open garage in his own backyard. The man pulled his own firearm and exchanged gunfire with the two assailants, wounded one in the leg. Both were arrested, and one has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. May 9th, we're not even in the first 10 days, but we are out of the first week. May 9th, Huntsville, Alabama. Two armed robbers confront 23-year-old concealed carry permit holder and his mother outside a grocery store. One of the robbers pointed the gun at the mother. The permit holder drew and fired in her defense. The would-be robbers escaped the confrontation in a stolen vehicle and were later apprehended by police. May 12th, Lancaster, California. In California, no less. A father shot and killed a man who broke into his home through a window and entered an upstairs bedroom. The same man tried earlier to break into a different house, and the father feared for the safety of himself and his children. May 14th, Tallahassee, Florida. A homeowner found himself outnumbered but not outgunned by four armed assailants who had stolen his keys and broken into his home. Armed with a rifle, the owner fired approximately 25 rounds to defend his life and his property. The suspects returned fire, but ultimately fled the residence and were arrested by law enforcement. Oh, wait, there's more. Here's May 20th in Mason County, Indiana. May 24th in St. Paul, Minnesota. May 25th in Hudson, Florida. May 7th in Chicago, Chirac, where a concealed carry permit holder, shot and killed an armed man, approached him, gun drawn in an alley. The permit holder was unharmed. May 30th in Houston, and May 31st in Las Vegas. All of these are instances of individuals who utilize their firearms to defend themselves. Now, they push this very, very dangerous narrative, right? And they send out stuff like this. Like if you notice the little flag there where it says, a defender owning a house gun is 43 times more likely to kill a family member by accident than in self-defense. They also point out here that guns are used to frighten and intimidate predators more often than in self-defense. But here's the deal, folks. There's truth hidden in their lies. Truth hidden in their lies. And here's what it is. If you notice there at the bottom, they actually admit the 2 million defensive gun uses each year. Now, those numbers have already been put out there by the CDC. We know this to be the case. All right? So they tried to cover it up. They tried to hide it by saying, well, it's not really self-defense. Well, let's talk about what it means. That also meant, they also try to downplay, well, it's burglary, it's robbery, it's trespassing, but it's also only 8.2% rape or sexual assault. Well, if you look at 2 million instances of defensive gun uses, if 8.2% are rape or sexual assault, well, guess what? That means 164,000 sexual assaults were stopped each year by defensive use of guns. 164,000. Now that's something to crow about. Also, the mere presence of a firearm is often enough. See, they want to say, well, if you don't utilize your firearm to shoot somebody, well, then that's not really defensive use of a firearm. But folks, that's not the case. 75.7% of the time, all they had to do was show the gun. 57% of the time, they verbally referred to the gun. Now, they verbally referred to the gun because, guess what? They were showing the gun. 49%, they pointed the gun at the offender. I'm assuming that if you're going to draw it, you're going to point it at the defender. I would think that it should be more than that. 23.9% of the time, they fired it. 15.6% of the time, they tried to shoot the offender. I'm sorry, if you're shooting, you should be trying to shoot the offender. Just saying. And 8.3% of the time, they wounded or killed the offender. Now, that's what they're pointing to. So they're trying to say that it's only defensive use of a firearm if you wound or kill the attacker. That's the only time that it is actually considered to be defensive use of a firearm. But we know that that's not the case. Because guess what? If you aren't able to have a firearm, guess what? It's not really anything to show. It's not really anything to talk about. Nothing to point, nothing to fire, and nothing to attempt to utilize to injure or to take out the offender. Absolutely nothing. And that is what we need to continue to point out to these folks. Look, folks, here's the thing. And I think you guys would agree with me. I don't think anybody here ever wants to have to use their firearm in self-defense. We don't. Most people, when it comes to quote unquote a good guy with a gun, most people recognize, and as you train, as you study, you learn the awesome responsibility that you have. Not just the right that you have to keep and bear arms, but the responsibility that you undertake when you choose to exercise that right. And I don't know a person out there who advocates for the Second Amendment who doesn't advocate for training, who doesn't say, go out, get trained, train regularly, right? Don't just take the classes. Yes, take the classes, but also go and train regularly. Shoot your firearm regularly. Know your firearm and how to properly utilize it for self-defense, whether you're in your home or whether you're in public. See, the archetype that they have when they think of a good guy with a gun, it's not our archetype. It's not the one that we created. It's the one that they created. It's that Hollywood picture that they put out there. Because we all know that that's where these gun grabbers get everything that they know about firearms. All the knowledge that they have all comes from Hollywood. We know how real Hollywood is, don't we? Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing these videos, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.